Hey, so I had been recently working on the lobby system for our game Ironclad, and I found that there weren't really any useful tutorials on how to incorporate a join code using the Advanced Sessions plugin. So I thought it was kind of my obligation to make one. So using the free Advanced Sessions plugin, I'm going to showcase how to do this. Before I go into the tutorial, I just wanted to show you the end product of what we're going to do. So one of our guys can just host the game, will be in. I just have the code pop up in our settings menu. So on another client, if you don't enter the right code, then you're going to be told that you can't join the session. But if we do the right code and join, then we should find it pretty quickly. All right, we're in. You can see that this is the actual right guy. And additionally, I have a public-private toggle. So if I toggle on to become a public lobby after we've already started the session, we should be able to join without any code and find it just fine. And we're in again. All right, so let's jump right into the actual tutorial. So just to go over some things that I will be assuming that you have already done. The first one is I'm not going to show you how to actually get the Advanced Sessions plugin into your engine and working at its very basic level. There are plenty of other videos and tutorials, but I will leave a link down in the description where you can actually download the files. But I won't be going into depth there because it would add like 10 minutes to the video. Additionally, I'm not going to go over any UI design. So I'm going to assume that you have the menus already set up, and shortly I will show you what my main menu looks like and what kind of element it's going to use. In fact, let's do that right now. So my main menu widget blueprint, the things that you are going to want to do if you want to follow this tutorial is have a host button, have a checkbox, have an input field, and then have a button to join as well. Additionally, I have another menu in my main game that will display the join code and display the status of whether the current lobby is public or private. So let's get right into it. So first off, I'm going to make a game instance. This is an Advanced Friends game instance that comes with the plugin. So I'm going to name mine Mars game instance because the code name for this project is Project Mars. And then let's just go ahead and set up the game instance in our project settings real quick. So let's edit and change, the game instance class to your game instance that you just changed. Right now, let's actually get our main menu spawning. I am going to do it in my level blueprint. So just go there. You don't have to worry about all the other code that's already in here. But we can create our widget. We can get the class. So mine's main menu. We're going to want to get the player controller and plug it in. Additionally, let's add it to the viewport. Just immediately sign it. Let's go into UI only mode. And we're also going to want to hide our mouse cursor, or show the mouse cursor rather. So we're going to use that player controller, going to hook up this widget to focus, and let's show mouse cursor. That's a method off of this. Set show mouse cursor to, we're going to set it. All right. So now if we compile and save that and press play, now we have our main menu. Great, but these buttons don't do anything yet. Let's actually set up the code for hosting a lobby, which we're going to set up in the game instance, which we just made. I did mean to make a game instances folder, put this in. That's fine. We'll open it. Let's create a custom event. Let's call this just to create server. And the first thing we're going to do is just go create advanced session. We're going to have a bunch of options here. We want to get our player controller, plug it in. The number of public connections, up to you. My game can have a maximum of 6 players. Yeah, we want to allow invites. It's not a dedicated server. Use presence, that. Yeah, this is good. We are going to deal with the extra settings, but not right this second. So on success, let's open level by object reference. So the object reference for me is going to be my environment scene. You will have a different scene, presumably. And in the options, we want to do $listen to indicate that we're going to host this on a listen server. Additionally, I would like to be told when creating a session fails. You're probably not going to run into this, but I'm going to just make a delegate, create session failed, and yeah, let's call this delegate. We'll bind to this delegate soon. So now in our main menu, let's hook up the pause button to actually do stuff. So we'll make this a variable if it wasn't already. And then we're going to scroll down to the bottom and do an onClicked event. So on host, we just want to get our game instance. And we're going to immediately cast to our game instance that we just created to Mars game instance. And if this cast worked, then we're going to call the create server method. Now, additionally, creating a server might take a second, hosting might take a second, and we don't want to create multiple. So the first thing I actually want to do is get our host button and disable it. Set is enabled to false. And then afterwards, if we fail, then we can re-enable it. If we succeed, then we won't be in this scene anyway. And I would actually just like to quickly hook up to this delegate. So we're going to move this way out of the way. I'm going to do an event on initialized. And again, I'm going to cast to the game instance. And I'm going to do bind event to create session failed. And we will drag off of here and add another custom event and do a catch create session failed. And really, we're just going to re-enable the host button. And then we'll also print a string. We'll say failed to create session. We'll make it red-ish and just show it for like 5 seconds. Again, we're not really going to be able to test that. Failing to create a session is not super easy to do. But let's just briefly test. So I'm going to play as client, but at the very least, pressing the host button, it disables itself for a second. And you'll load in, and you will notice that perhaps you can't move. So let's fix that right now. We'll remember that in our main menu level blueprint, we set our input mode to UI only and enabled the cursor. But we never did the opposite of that. Being in UI only mode means that the player controller no longer actually detects your inputs, so you won't be able to move. So what I'd like to do is when this widget gets destroyed, so when this widget gets destroyed, I want to change the input mode. The reason why I don't want to do it like in begin play on the next level is new players joining the session will actually change the input mode for other players. So event destruct. So I'm just going to create a new function called menu teardown. And we're just going to immediately call this function. In here, we're just going to simply get our player controller, set input mode to game only, And then we'll also do set cursor, set show mouse cursor. Yep. And we don't want to show the mouse cursor, but this should be enough. So let's test real quick. This host, we're in, and now we can move around. Great. Now our next task is going to be to set up the join button, right? So we'll make this into a variable, and we'll scroll down to the bottom and do an on-clicked event as well. So when we click it similarly, let's see, I'm going to disable it. This is more important for the join button because joining it can take like 5 seconds. And you really don't want to spam it. You will break something. Okay, and then we will find sessions advanced. Of course, we will get our player controller, hook it up. I'm going to set max players to 50, which I will kind of explain why later. Don't need any of this. All servers fine. On success, we want to actually join the session. Well, sorry, I actually skipped a step. So finding sessions will find a number of sessions, and it will output in this results array of sessions. So to join essentially a random session, we're really just going to join the first session. So on success, if results is not empty, then we want to actually join one. So it's not empty, then we want to just get the first one. And join it. Otherwise, let's just print a string, no sessions found. Additionally, if we failed, we'll just do the same print string. Again, I'm going to make this red-ish and show for like 5 seconds. So if we play with 2 people, I'm going to do is play as client. And one guy hosts should be in here. And then if the other joins, then we eventually join. Something that I forgot to do is that if we fail to find a session, we should re-enable this button. Okay, this is the very basic functionality. Obviously, this does not have the join code like I promised in the beginning. So let's start doing that. First, I want to actually generate a join code. So I'm going to do this in my game instance. Game instance is going to be in charge of generating code because we're also in charge of creating the session. So I'm going to make a new function called generate join code. I'm going to have some variables as well. So first, I'm going to have a code length and make that an integer. If you compile this, then you can give it a default value. I'm going to do 5. So this means that our join code is going to have 5 characters. And that's what I showcased in the beginning. Additionally, I want to have a string variable, and I'm going to call this characters. So basically, I'm going to randomly pull a character from this string 5 times. I'm just going to populate characters with all of our valid characters. So I'm going to do all numbers and then caps for this ABC, all letters. Now, actually, I did lie. I'm actually not going to do all letters. I'm going to take out O because O and 0 may be confusing. I'm going to use a font that has 0 showcased with a slash through it. But if somebody sees an O, which doesn't have a slash, they could mistake that for a 0. Just a for loop. we're going to start at index 1 and go to the code length. This is inclusive of code length. So if we start at 0, then it would go 6 times. And we're actually just going to take the characters, take the length of the characters, get a random integer to get substring. This is going to get a random integer from 0 to the length of the characters, and a substring with the length of 1 from characters. And then let's have a local variable. So this is going to be our actual code. We are going to slowly populate this. So we will append code to our new random variable, and we are going to actually set it to code. So for each loop, we are going to get a new character. And then on completion of this loop, then we can actually return our code. So we need to have an output for this. This is our join code. On completion, we want to return, and we will just return the code. Now we need to go back to our create session and actually give it the join code. So I'm going to give myself some room here. We're going to utilize these extra settings. I'm just going to quickly just promote this to a variable. And we're not going to actually put it in yet. But first, I am going to clear extra settings because we're going to populate it every time we press host. And because this code lives on the game instance, it will live throughout the entirety of the game's lifespan. But let's add a new value to our array of extra settings. And we are actually just going to, let's generate our join code. Sorry, this does not need to be here. We're going to generate our join code first. And then from here, we're going to make a literal session property string. We're going to name this join code. And now we're going to add this to our extra settings. And then we can create the session, and we can actually pass in extra settings. Additionally, this isn't really relevant to the join code, but I'm going to destroy the session before we attempt to create a new one. The reason for this is it's kind of fallback of if you have a session alive that you're already a part of, you won't be able to create or join additional sessions. Really, you should be destroying the session when you leave, but in case that doesn't go exactly to plan, just destroy the session before you create one. So now this session has the information on what its join code is. But let's hook up player controller real quick for that. Let's just use one. We aren't displaying the code anywhere, and additionally, we aren't like filtering on it. So let's quickly just display it. So in my pause menu, I have this join code text. We'll make it a variable. And we'll go into our graph. You don't have to worry about any of the code that's already here. We're going to make a new function. Let's do update join code. We're going to, before we forget, let's just immediately call update join code here in our event construct. And then in update join code, now we're going to actually just get the information from the session itself. That's why we didn't save it anywhere in the game instance. So how can we get these session settings? Well, we can get session settings. And we will get the extra settings and get a session property string. And, oh, what is the setting name? The setting name is join code. Has to be exactly the same. And then when we find it, then take our join code text string, and we will set text. Then we set it to that. Additionally, just for clarity, maybe I'm going to append let's do this. And maybe like code : space. Okay. So now if we host, get out of here, go into our pause menu, we have our random code. Now we actually need to join on this session. So we're back here in our join button code where we can just add some more stuff. So similarly, we're going to drag off of these filters that we're going to use, promote it to a variable real quick, just call it filters. We're not going to input it here. So I'm just going to make sure that we clear this. First, let's make a literal session property string and make literal session search property. We'll do equals. This key will be join code. This value is going to be what we type into our input. So you might have to go back to your input field and make it a variable so that you can drag out and get the get text. Then we're just going to plug it in to our value. So we're making a new pair, and now we can add this to our filters. Sorry. So after clearing, we will add this to our filters. I'm going to destroy sessions prior to trying to find a new one. And whether we succeed or fail, we're just going to continue on our way. Now, you might expect that we would plug in filters here, and that would filter the sessions for a matching join code. But adding the filter here does not work. However, filtering afterwards does. So instead of doing this on success, we want to filter session results. We will filter the session results on our filters, and we'll plug in results here. And now, instead of plugging the results, we plug in the filtered results into our branch. Also, we will plug it in here. So you might think that this is actually the same as filtering beforehand, save for some, space complexity. But in fact, there is a potential issue. So Steam particularly caps the amount of results that you can get from find sessions to 50, which is why we're matching it here. This can be an issue if your game is particularly popular or if you're testing with Spacewar, the public app ID 480. So you could potentially search for all the sessions. Maybe there are 100 sessions that are active. You find the first 50, you're trying to match a code to it. Maybe the lobby you're trying to find doesn't get returned in the first 50, and it incorrectly tells you that this session can't be found. So that is an issue with this implementation, but it doesn't seem like there's a way around it using this plugin. You'll have to have your own implementation, and it's something that I am going to look into in the future for our own game. That being said, if you have your own app ID right now, you're not going to run into actual issues, not until your game is launched. But even if you weren't filtering with Spacewar, you could run into issues where you couldn't find your own sessions. But this should work. So let's test it. So we will host and see our code. So if we type into here 599RS, sorry, I want to not get the right code first. So you can see that we can type in any amount of characters. We'll fix that in a moment. So we should get no lobbies found, no sessions found. Now let's actually type in the correct thing. Okay. So here we are. Let's move on to the next thing. So real quick, before we move on to public versus private lobbies, I just want to make this join code a little bit more user-friendly and a little bit less error-prone. So we are going to, using the input field, we're going to do onTextChanged and run some code. So basically, what I want to do is I want to limit the text field to all caps, and I want to limit it to 5 characters. So on change, let's just get the substring. We're going to first need to convert to a string, but it's going to do that here if we just untoggle the context. So let's get a substring, and we'll start index 0 and just go to 5. And then we can do back to text. Yeah, text to upper is what I want to do. Anytime that we try to type in more characters, I want to limit it to the first 5 characters and also just make it uppercase. And then we're just going to set it back. So let's set the text. Great. So if we just compile this and test it real quick, we don't need to test with multiple people. If we type in here, I don't have caps lock on, but we're going to essentially be capped. And I can't type more than 5 characters. And that's exactly what we want. Okay, so let's move on to making a lobby public rather than having to use the join code. So let's go back to our widget. Let's make sure that this checkbox is a variable because we'll be using it. We won't be using any of these functions, but we'll be getting its value. So when we host, we just want to grab the value and get is checked. And then we want to pass it into create server. Now create server doesn't actually take any variables right now, any parameters rather, but let's change that. So is public. Let's do b is public and make that a Boolean. So now we can pass this in. Now, in create server, we are also, along with generating the join code, we are going to add to the extra settings another value. So let's right here make literal session. Now, let's just select bool. We're not actually going to use bool, and I'll show you why. There's a little tooltip that says that using these extra settings does not actually support bools. So we will not use them. We will use an int instead. Make literal session property int. This key is public. And now we're going to add another value. And that should be all the changes we need here. So basically, how I would like to set this up is, regardless, a lobby is going to get a join code. But if the lobby is private, then you will be forced to use the join code to join it. And if it's public, you can still join it with the join code, or you can just press join without typing anything into the box and potentially join that lobby that are not full. So let's add some logic for that. So after we clear our filter settings, we want to, let's make a branch. So if, let's see, if our join code is empty, then we'll do this condition. If we're not empty, then we will add this to the filter. But if it is empty, then that means it's a public lobby. So we want to add a public filter. Let's add new one. And similarly, we're going to make a literal session property int for is public. And the value should be 1 for true. And then we will make a literal session search property equals. So if this is a public lobby, then we have to filter on public. So basically, if we don't type in anything to the join code box, then we want to search for only public lobbies. So after we find all the sessions, we will filter on lobbies that are public. If we type in anything, then we're only going to filter on the join code. Because if you're typing in something, then that means that you want to join a specific lobby. And if you don't find a lobby with that join code, you won't join anything, even if there are public lobbies, right? So let's test it out. So we already tested the join code, so let's do a public lobby. And this is pretty much gonna function similarly to how it functioned in the very beginning. So we'll join with no code, and this means we're looking for a public lobby. We should be able to find this lobby. All right, we found it. Walk in front of this guy. Now let's just leave here. I will type in a code that is wrong, and it should tell me that I can't find anything. And then we will type in the actual MRTNQ, the actual code. So it's like, oh, if your friend hosts a lobby, but you don't have enough friends to play, maybe just makes it public, but you want to actually specifically join his lobby, so you type in the code. But conversely, maybe there's a situation where you have, 2 or 3 friends. Maybe you thought you were going to get more people on, but turns out that's not the case. And now you want to change it into a public lobby. But now we want to actually make sure that our pause menu is correctly saying if our lobby is public. This is actually just a checkbox with this gray image as the unchecked state and the green image as the checked state. You might have noticed that didn't update. Let's actually change that. So we're going to make sure that this checkbox is a variable, and very similarly to our update join code, we are going to make an update is public check. Let's see. So first, I actually want to only do some of this code if we are the server, if we have authority. We're going to be able to actually change if the lobby is public or not. But we don't want clients to be able to do that. So let's only allow the host to do that. So let's set is enabled. So if we're not the host, then this checkbox is not enabled, so we can't change it. Additionally, we are going to set session settings. Get the session settings, get the extra settings, get an int this time with the name is public on success. And then we will get this checkbox again and set is checked if we found it, and set it equal to this boolean. We are not calling this code yet, of course, so let's go back to the event graph and call it right here. Update is public check. So now when we go in and we press public, we host this, that is green. And now the final thing I'm going to do is show you that we can update the state of its public mid-game. So let's do that. We don't need to be the main menu or this or this. So we just need the pause menu. So on this checkbox, we want to do on check state changed. We want to make an event for this. We, again, if we're authority. If we are the host and we have authority, first, we are going to get the session settings. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to update the session with new extra settings. But a lot of these values are the same, and we just kind of want to drag them across. Allow invites, allow join in progress. And we will do the num connections. I'm actually not sure if this is the same value as this, so I'm just going to manually put in 6. Now, I am going to remove an item. Make literal session property int is public. So I'm going to remove the is public value. And then I'm going to add it back. And the value we're going to pass into this, let's make another one of these. And this value is going to be the is check value. And then we're just going to hook up extra settings here. And this is pretty messy, but this should get the job done. But let us know if we did in fact get the job done or not. So on failure, let's just print a string that says fail to update session. Again, we're going to make this reddish. It can appear for 5 seconds. And that's fine. We don't need it on success. Okay, let's test this out. Let's do 3 players. This might be a little bit easier to demonstrate. So let's host private. And we'll just bring up the pause menu for this code. So I'm just going to try and join with no code. And here I will join with the right code, 64E65. So no sessions found for this guy. For this guy, we'll find the session. And you can see that he sees the same code, and we'll make this public. And so now it's a public lobby. So now if I join with no code, then I should join successfully. And we do. Now, the state of this isn't actually replicated. I have done it in my version of the game, but I think it's a little bit out of the scope for this. It's not really related to the Advanced Sessions plugin, so I won't be covering it. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and I will try to help you out. One other thing is that if you try to host with 2 of these clients at the same time, it will crash your editor. This is only an issue with doing so in the editor. If you make a build, you shouldn't have any issues with that. But yeah, so that is how you use the Advanced Sessions plugin to make lobbies with join codes and how to update the lobbies with if they're public or not.